My name is Ethan Miller, and I was born in Phoenix on the last day of 1996. Ever since I was a child, I knew there was something different about me, though no one in my family wanted to admit it at first. My mother always told me that I was born tangled in the umbilical cord, barely breathing, as if I didn't want to come into this world, or maybe I already belonged to another. "You came into this world with one foot here and the other over there," she used to say, never realizing how true that would become. From a very young age, strange things began to happen. When I was barely speaking my first words, I would often look up at the ceiling and laugh, pointing my tiny fingers while saying angels. My mother, Hannah, a deeply religious woman, thought it was something beautiful, a divine blessing, but it wasn't. What started out as innocent turned into something I still can't explain. When I turned 6, something happened that changed everything. One afternoon, without anyone knowing yet, I felt the urge to say goodbye. I walked into the living room where my mother was folding clothes and said with a child's innocence, "Grandma Rose is gone now, Mom." My mother looked at me, puzzled, not understanding. Hours later, we got the call. My grandmother had passed away that very night, unexpectedly. After that, nothing was the same. My parents started looking at me differently, and my mother's faith became mixed with fear. They couldn't explain it, but I just felt like I had seen something I wasn't meant to. If you love horror stories, subscribe and turn on the bell, because what I'm about to share is not easy to forget. I thought that was the end of it, just a coincidence, something grown-ups make up to keep from being scared. But the truth is, it was only the beginning. A few months later, I drew our family. My mom, my dad, me, and my 2 grandparents, but I left one out. When my father Daniel saw the drawing, he asked me, "Where's Grandpa Frank?" I looked at him and replied, as if it were completely normal, "He already went up the stairs. He's up there waving at you." My father turned pale. That same afternoon, his father passed away in the hospital. They found him with a slight smile, as if he really had said goodbye to someone before leaving. From that point on, my parents stopped treating these things as curious stories. They began to fear them. I did too, because I realized that seeing isn't always a blessing. Sometimes it's a curse. And what came next still keeps me awake at night. After what happened with Grandpa Frank, everything changed at home. My parents didn't know how to treat me anymore, and I started keeping quiet. I was afraid of seeing something again, scared that whatever I said might bring another death. But that didn't stop things from happening. Soon after, my mom was taking me to school like always. It was just another morning, and I sat quietly, staring out the window. We drove past a street near our house that I had never paid attention to before, and I said, "Mom, a man who's not here anymore lives there." She slammed on the brakes. There was no one in that house. It had been empty for months. She didn't say anything, but I remember how tightly she gripped the steering wheel. They tried to keep me distracted, to stop me from talking about what I saw, but the signs were always there. Whenever someone in the family got sick, I just knew. No one told me, but I could feel it. It was like something whispered in my ear, without words, just a knowing. One night, while I was playing in the living room, I saw a shadow pass by the hallway. I thought it was my mum, but when I called her, she answered from the kitchen. When I told her, she just said not to think about it and to go to sleep. But that shadow, it wasn't the only one I'd see. My mother started to worry more when physical things began happening. Objects moving on their own, doors closing by themselves, and that smell of tobacco. A strong, heavy scent that filled the house, especially in the mornings. No one in our home smoked, they never had. One day, when I woke up, I saw the hallway window slightly open, and next to it on the wall, a dark stain like ash. My dad said it must be dampness, but I knew better. That house wasn't just ours anymore. Something else was there. Over time, we stopped talking about it, as if ignoring it would make it go away. But it didn't. The signs became clearer, and I couldn't hide from them anymore. I remember one rainy night so well. I was lying in bed when I suddenly heard footsteps above. But we lived in a one-story house. I called my mother, and when she came, everything was silent. She held me tight, but her hands were shaking. She knew too. We weren't alone. The hardest part was realizing that it didn't matter what I said or did. They would come anyway, because there was something in me that called to them, something that neither I nor anyone could control. And the first time I saw it clearly, it's something I'll never forget. Years passed, but the strange happenings never fully went away. When I was 8, something more began to show itself. It wasn't just shadows or feelings anymore. It was something you could hear, something that wouldn't let you sleep peacefully. And the worst part, it kept happening more and more. Many mornings, I'd wake up to the thick smell of cigarettes. I'd open my eyes, and the first thing I'd notice was that heavy cloud, as if someone had smoked all night inside the house. I'd walk to the kitchen, looking for my mom, and she always said the same thing, that smell again. We'd check everything, but there were no open windows, no candles, nothing that could explain it. And even though we tried to ignore it, we knew it wasn't normal. But it wasn't just the smell. I began to notice that at night, always at the same time, something would walk down the hallway. At first I thought it was my dad. You could hear the footsteps, heavy, like someone wearing boots, walking from the entrance to the end. My room was close to the hallway, and every time I heard that sound, I'd pull the covers over my head. I never saw anyone, but the footsteps, they never failed. Between midnight and 2 in the morning, you could feel it, always the same pattern. Footsteps that approached, stopped in front of doors, then moved away. At first I was terrified, but over time, you get used to fear. You believe that if you don't do anything, if you don't move, they won't either. My mom heard it too. One night she told me she thought it was the soul of someone who had gotten stuck, searching for something they couldn't find. But I didn't feel that way. It didn't seem like a lost presence. It was something that knew exactly where it was, and it knew I could hear it too. Things stayed like that for months, until one night I decided I didn't want to be afraid anymore. I asked my dad to help me build a cardboard fort in the hallway. I wanted to sleep there, to prove to myself there was nothing. He thought it was a fun idea, just kid stuff. We cut up boxes, set up blankets and pillows, and I even brought my favorite stuffed animals. That night I felt brave. I thought I'd finally prove that everything was just in my head. But what happened inside that fort was the first time I truly felt there was no escape. That night, I was determined. No more fear. I wanted to prove to myself there was nothing beyond the noises and the smells. My dad helped with great enthusiasm, like it was a grand adventure. We stacked big boxes in the hallway, taped them together, and inside I placed my pillows, a flashlight, and a few toys. I felt safe, as if cardboard could protect me from everything. My parents kissed me goodnight and went to bed. I stayed alone in my little shelter, feeling brave. For a while I played with my toys, turned the flashlight on and off, and listened to the usual sounds of the house. Everything seemed calm, but when I turned off the flashlight and lay down, the footsteps began. At first, faint, from the entrance of the hallway. Then, closer and closer. I could feel the floor trembling with each step. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. I shut my eyes tight, repeating over and over in my mind that it wasn't real, that it was just my imagination. But the footsteps didn't stop. They came right up to my fort. I could hear the boxes creaking with the echo of those heavy boots. I held my breath, terrified to make the slightest sound. Then silence. I slowly opened my eyes and very carefully peeked through a tiny gap in the cardboard. There was no one, only darkness. I thought it was over, that everything was fine again. I settled back down trying to sleep, but that's when I heard something that froze me completely. One of my toys, a small plastic house that only played music when a lever was pulled, suddenly started to play its tune. No one had touched it. It was across the hallway. The melody was soft, but each note hit me like a hammer. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. The smell of cigarettes returned, stronger than ever. And then I felt it, a breath, warm and slow, right behind my head. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a dream. It was someone, something there with me. I shut my eyes so tight they ached. I wanted to disappear. I don't know how long it lasted, but I woke up with my parents shaking me. They found me crying, trembling. They told me it was just a nightmare. But I knew it wasn't. It wasn't a dream. It was real. From that night on, I never slept in the hallway again. The years went by, and though I tried to move on, there were nights when I couldn't help but remember what I had experienced in that cardboard fort. I didn't talk about it with anyone, not even my parents. I learned to keep silent, thinking that if I didn't mention it, everything would go away. But sometimes silence becomes a weight that suffocates you. By the time I was 14, I was no longer a child, but I still felt something wasn't right. The nights became restless again, though I tried to keep my mind busy with normal things, school, friends, video games. Still, that presence never really left. One night, I was lying in bed, with my cat Milo asleep beside me. It was late, and I was still scrolling through my phone like any teenager. The house was completely silent, my parents were asleep, and the only sound was the soft hum of the fan. Then, I felt it again, the footsteps. That slow, heavy walk, starting in the hallway, creeping closer. It didn't scare me like it used to, or at least I thought it didn't. I tried to ignore it, kept looking at my screen, but the sound stopped right in front of my bedroom door. Milo, who had been sleeping deeply, suddenly lifted his head, his eyes fixed on the door, his body tense. At that moment, the doorknob started to shake, rattling violently, as if someone on the other side was trying to break in. My heart leapt into my throat. I couldn't move. My cat darted under the bed and I dropped my phone. The door was trembling, the hinges creaking. My grandfather's old violin, always leaning in the corner, let out a sharp note. The strings vibrated on their own, one by one, as if invisible hands were plucking them. I didn't scream, I couldn't, I just watched, waiting for it all to end. And suddenly, everything stopped. Silence returned, but it wasn't normal silence. It was emptiness, like the air had been sucked out of the room. I couldn't hear anything, not even my own breathing. I just felt the weight of something watching me, something that didn't need noise anymore to be known. Minutes passed, or maybe just seconds, until Milo crept out from under the bed, shaking. He looked at me like he knew exactly what had happened. That night, I didn't sleep. From then on, I understood that no matter how much time passed, whatever was following me would always find a way back. Always. And the next time, it would be much more personal. At 20, I thought I had left it all behind. I no longer lived in constant fear of footsteps or invisible eyes. I had learned to live with the past, or at least I tried. But life always finds a way to show you that some wounds never heal. My dog Buddy, who had been with me since I was 6, got seriously ill. He was my companion, the only one who had stayed by my side through all those dark nights. For months I watched him weaken, suffering, until one day he just couldn't go on. His death shattered me. I fell into a deep sadness, one I couldn't explain. I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to leave the house. The nights grew long again, filled with silence. But it wasn't just the grief that consumed me. There was something else. Something I felt had stayed with me since the day Buddy left. I started having dreams, nightmares where I heard him crying, saw his eyes begging for help. I woke up drenched in sweat, heart racing, feeling like he was still there beside me. But it was only an echo, a shadow of what I had lost. One night, after days of barely sleeping, I decided to go downstairs to the living room. I thought maybe a change of space would help. The couch was next to the wall facing the yard, the same yard where Buddy used to run every morning. Right next to it was the iron gate we always kept locked with a padlock. I lay down, trying not to think about anything. I just wanted to rest a bit. Around 2 in the morning, a sound woke me. A metallic bang. The gate. I thought it was the wind. I closed my eyes, trying not to give it importance. But the noise came again, louder. The gate was moving, as if someone was pushing it from outside. I got up, but saw nothing through the window. Everything was still. I lay back down, And that's when the feeling returned, the one I knew so well, the one that told me I wasn't alone. I couldn't see anything, but I felt a presence, heavy, like someone was standing right in front of me, watching. I closed my eyes, wishing it would go away, but the air turned cold, dense. With every second, the fear grew. That night, I knew something had come back, and it wasn't just the pain of losing Buddy. It was something else. Something that had been waiting for me to let my guard down. After that night, when the gate rattled without reason, something inside me broke. I felt like I couldn't trust even my own home anymore. Sleeping became impossible. I'd close my eyes, but the feeling of being watched never left. It didn't matter if it was day or night. 2 days later, exhausted from not being able to rest, I lay back down on the couch. Maybe I wanted to face whatever was with me, or maybe I just didn't have the strength to resist anymore. The living room was dim, lit only by the faint streetlight filtering through the window. Outside, everything seemed calm. I wrapped myself in a blanket, hoping to find some peace. But it was useless. Soon after, the sound returned, the sharp bang of the gate moving. This time I didn't get up. I stayed still, waiting for it to stop. But it didn't. On the contrary, the noise grew louder, as if someone was shaking it desperately. I closed my eyes, and that's when I felt it. That presence, that weight in the air that warned something was very close. I opened my eyes, heart racing, and there it was. A dark figure, tall, over 7 feet, stood in front of me, just steps away. It had no face. It was like a dense shadow, blacker than night. It seemed to swallow all the light around it. I could smell the stench of decay, like rotting flesh, like something long dead. I couldn't move. Every muscle in my body was frozen, as if something held me down. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The shadow didn't move. It just stood there watching me, or at least that's what it felt like. That its invisible eyes were piercing through me, seeing straight into the depths where I kept all my fears. The air became impossible to breathe. I felt like I was suffocating. And then, everything went black. I woke up with the first rays of sunlight spilling through the window. I was sweating, my body numb. I sat up, disoriented, trying to understand if it had all been a dream. But when I looked at the gate, I knew. The padlock, which had been secured the night before, lay on the floor, the gate wide open. There was no wind, no explanation, only the certainty that what I had seen was real. And from that moment on, I knew something had chosen me, that I could no longer run. After that night in the living room, with the gate wide open and the padlock inexplicably on the ground, there was no turning back. The idea that it was all in my head, just dreams or childhood imagination, crumbled completely. Whatever was haunting me wasn't tied to a place. It was tied to me. I tried to leave it all behind, to get a fresh start. I moved out of my parents' house, thinking that maybe in a different space, everything would quiet down. I chose a small apartment in Scottsdale, far from memories, far from long hallways and rusty gates. At first, it worked. The days were peaceful, no strange noises, no shadows. I thought maybe everything had stayed there, in my childhood. But no. The first weeks were calm until one night, when I got home from work, I felt it again. It wasn't a sound or a shadow. It was that sensation, that weight on my chest I knew so well. The air turned heavy, like every corner of the place was watching me. I told myself it couldn't be, that it was just exhaustion, but in the early hours, the smell returned. Tobacco, that same thick, clinging smell that had followed me for years. I checked every corner, opened windows, sniffed my clothes, the kitchen, nothing. There was no explanation. I closed everything again, trying to sleep, but I couldn't. From that night on, the small signs began to multiply. Lights flickering for no reason, the bathroom door slightly open when I woke up, and my cat, Milo, who now lived with me, behaved just as he had before. He stared fixedly at the corners, sometimes bristling and running to hide, as if he saw something I couldn't. That's when I accepted it. It wasn't the house. It never was. It was me. Something was following me, something that fed on my fear, waiting for just the right moment to show itself. And I realized I couldn't escape. It didn't matter where I slept, how far I went, it was always there. And the more I tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. One night, looking in the mirror, I saw something behind me. A flicker, a fleeting figure. I turned immediately, but there was nothing. Just the reflection of my own tired, resigned eyes. I knew this wasn't something temporary. It was part of me. And the most terrifying thing was that now it seemed closer than ever. One of the things that affected me the most through all of this was how everything seemed to repeat. The same smells, the same sounds, the same sensations, as if whatever was following me had a routine, as if it knew exactly when and how to appear. And now, in this new place, it started again. It was just another early morning. I had had an exhausting day and fell asleep earlier than usual, but something woke me. It wasn't a noise or a dream. It was the smell. Tobacco. Strong, as if someone had been smoking right next to my bed. I sat up quickly, my heart pounding, and turned on the lamp. Everything looked the same as always, but the smell was still there, surrounding me, seeping into every corner. I got up, walked through the apartment, searching for some source, something that could explain what I felt. I found nothing. I opened the window trying to clear the air, but it stayed thick, heavy with something I couldn't see. I went back to bed with that uneasy feeling of not being alone. I pulled the blanket up to my neck, trying to convince myself that everything would pass if I just stayed still. It didn't. I heard the footsteps. They weren't the neighbors. They didn't come from the shared hallway. They were inside my own apartment. They started in the kitchen, slow, heavy, like always. Each step echoed on the floor, drawing closer and closer. Milo, who had been sleeping at my feet, jumped up and bolted into the closet. I saw him trembling, hidden, as the footsteps reached my bedroom door. The doorknob turned, first slowly, then with more force. The door rattled, shook, as if someone was pushing from the other side. I couldn't breathe. I was paralyzed. And then I felt it. A hand, cold, pressing down on my shoulder. I didn't scream. I just shut my eyes, wishing it would all end. When I opened them again, everything was silent. The door closed, the smell still lingering. I stayed there frozen until the morning light streamed through the window. That day I knew nothing had changed, that no matter how much I tried to escape, how much I tried to start over, it would always come back. And now I felt it closer than ever, as if it was preparing for something more. After everything I've lived through, I've learned not to trust the calm moments, because calm, when you're used to fear, is just a trap, a whisper before the scream. Since that night when I felt that cold hand on my shoulder, I haven't slept peacefully. Though sometimes days, even weeks, go by without anything happening. I know it's always there, lurking, waiting, as if it knows when I'm at my weakest. I've tried to find answers. I talk to people who understand the paranormal, read books, watch documentaries. Some say they're lost souls. Others say I was born with some special sensitivity. But none of them gave me an answer that could ease what I feel. Because this isn't just a story, it's my life. I live with the certainty that at any moment everything can start again. That dark figure can appear once more in the middle of the night. That the smell of tobacco can fill my home without reason. That the footsteps will echo just when I think I'm safe. And the hardest part is not being able to tell it without people looking at me like I'm crazy. But you, who have listened to all of this, you know there are things that have no explanation. That not everything around us can be seen or touched. Sometimes the most real things are the ones we cannot understand. A few days ago, while I was preparing this story, something happened. I was writing, focused, when I heard a sharp knock on the window. I jumped up immediately, thinking it was just the wind. But when I looked, there was nothing. I closed the curtains and went back to my desk. But when I turned my chair, there it was. The mark, a faint handprint on the glass, as if someone had pressed their hand against it from the outside. I stood still, not knowing what to do. That mark wasn't there before, I'm sure of it. And that's why I decided to tell everything, because I know this isn't over, because I know it will keep happening, and maybe someone else is living it too. I don't have all the answers. I just know it's getting closer, that it's getting stronger. What if it never leaves? What if what's following me never wanted to leave?